All right, I'm Laura Ingraham. This is the Ingraham Angle from Wyoming tonight. We have a lot to get to, so we're going to dive right in. All about Liz. That's the focus of tonight's angle. Now, all high and mighty, Liz Cheney has spent basically the last year claiming to be the supreme defender of the Constitution.
I will never put party above my duty to the Constitution. I swore an oath under God, and I will abide by that oath. I'm a conservative Republican, and I believe deeply in the policies of limited government. Those of us who believe in Republican principles and ideals have a responsibility to try to lead the party back to what it can be. Our nation is preserved by those who abide by their oaths to our Constitution.
But in reality, right now, Liz Cheney is leading an attack on the presidency itself. So hauling White House counsel Pat Cipollone in for questioning via subpoena after he had already talked to the committee voluntarily, by the way, it's just a sign of growing desperation by a woman who understands that her political career is essentially over. She's trying to stretch her 15 minutes of fame regardless of how much damage she does to the White House, to the principle of separation of powers, and of course to the Constitution. Now think about it this way. How on earth is any president supposed to have candid conversations with his White House counsel, frankly, about anything, if he believes that that White House counsel can be dragged before a partisan congressional committee that is hell-bent on doing whatever it can to keep its base happy and torture the president? And by the way, Liz Cheney isn't just a wrecking ball to the Constitution. She's an unrepentant liar. She isn't just smearing Trump, by the way. She's smearing the entire country that voted for Trump. And she repeatedly lies about what the America First movement is all about.
The reality that we face today as Republicans, as we think about the choice in front of us, we have to choose, because Republicans cannot both be loyal to Donald Trump and loyal to the Constitution.
Oh, really? Like, who gave you the authority to say that? Like 74 million Americans voted for Trump. None of them count. In fact, we are the ones trying to save the Constitution, Liz, from you and your new pals who want to abolish, I don't know, just the Senate, eliminate the Electoral College, destroy the Supreme Court, force Americans to submit to global rules made by international bureaucrats, just that. Repeatedly and consistently, Cheney has taken the side of Pelosi and the hard left against the Constitution. She's also repeatedly lied about the events of January 6th.
He summoned a mob to Washington. He knew they were armed on January 6th. He knew they were angry. And he directed the violent mob to march on the Capitol.
I mean, the notion that hundreds of people wandering through the Capitol represented an attempt to subvert the U.S. government, and that was the plan, is just ludicrous. We know that virtually everyone in the American populist movement opposed the events of January 6th. They announced their opposition at the time, and they've repeatedly stated that any lawbreakers from that day should be punished. But as for President Trump, he certainly never indicated that he intended to overthrow the Constitution. Instead, he did dispute the vote count, just as Democrats did in 2000, 2004, and 2016.
Objection is in writing, signed by a number of members of the House of Representatives.
The objection today is raised because there are irregularities across this country with regard to voting.
I have an objection because 10 of the 29 electoral votes cast by Florida were cast by electors not lawfully certified.
That's like K-Tel greatest hits there. Well, also, let's not forget that Cheney's lies hurt America. Here in the United States, most Americans, and certainly the great majority of Republicans, know that she's just trying to get revenge for her loss of influence inside the GOP. The GOP has moved on from Liz Cheney. But in the rest of the world, her smears and her lies will be used by our nation's enemies as anti-American propaganda to discourage their people from working with us. And let's not forget that Cheney is allied with the radical anti-Americans on the left right now. She wants Nancy Pelosi to remain as Speaker of the House. So by supporting Pelosi and the Democrats, Cheney encourages the radical anti-Americanism that tears down our statues, hurts our standard of living, undermines our military, trashes our culture, generally tells the rest of the world that America is and always has been evil. So at this point, you might wonder, like, why has Cheney turned against America while claiming she's the supreme defender of the Constitution? Why is she using her last few months of her career in Congress to pursue vengeance and spread lies? Well, I don't know. I think the answer is obvious. She belonged to a political movement, the Bush Cheney movement, that was committed to open borders, endless wars, shipping jobs to China, making sure that Roe versus Wade would never, ever be overturned. You just use that to get elected. So in 2015 and 2016, the Republican base effectively ended the Bush Cheney movement, choosing new leadership that would actually try to help Americans instead of hurting them. But Democrats and wannabe Democrats like Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, they only care about holding on to that last shred of power in the old glory days. But that power is slipping away from them. Bob Corker, Jeff Flake, they already left the Senate. Pat Toomey, he's going to be gone at the end of the year. George P. Bush is a nice guy, but he was annihilated in his primary. And Cheney, she's next. Of course, she's not going to go quietly.
Do you see yourself running for president as a way to prevent what you say would be the destruction of the party, ultimately damaging our country?
I haven't made a decision about that yet. And I'm obviously very focused on my reelection. I'm very focused on the January 6th committee. I'm very focused on my obligations to do the job that I have now. And I'll make a decision about 24 down the road.
I mean, this is why people think Washington is completely delusional, totally separated from the way real people live their lives. That comment. So whatever she decides, though, she can count on unlimited support from the regime media that longs for the day when Republicans like Liz Cheney merely pretended to disagree with the Clintons while essentially implementing virtually the same policies as the Democrats.
There needs to be Republicans of courage. Liz Cheney is one of those Republicans.
Liz Cheney in particular is showing us that courage is contagious.
Congresswoman Liz Cheney offering some much needed truth during a time of so many dangerous lies.
Liberals and never-Trumpers, they love Liz. But they're not the voters here in Wyoming, who, it seems to me, are tired of her tedious games. This is a great and beautiful state, and the people of this state deserve a representative who's more interested in advancing Wyoming's interests than Liz Cheney's own rabid crusade against the old GOP. So forget Trump for a minute. Do you think Liz Cheney is going to be supporting or campaigning for someone like Ron DeSantis or Mike Pompeo if they run for president, and let's say she doesn't run? Of course she won't be. Remember, her litmus test is, if you do not denounce Trump, you are a danger to America, and frankly, you need to be canceled. Liz Cheney is where she is because she has a famous father. That is literally the only reason she won her House seat here in Wyoming in the first place. But America is a representative democracy. It is not an aristocracy. And next month, Liz Cheney is going to see and feel democracy in action. That's The Angle.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.